To the programme, I'm Martine Dennis. Now, it was anti-Assad graffiti in the city of DERAA that sparked Syria's revolution in 2011. But what started as a peaceful uprising has turned into a war that has killed hundreds of thousands and it's uprooted millions. It's drawn in an assortment of foreign powers, and now, with the backing of Russia, Iran and the Lebanese militia Hezbollah, President Assad is seeking to retake control of DERAA, one of the last remaining rebel-held areas. DERAA is in the far southwest of Syria, and government forces have massed in the region. They're shelling and they're dropping barrel bombs, and some reports suggest that they're getting support from Russia in the air campaign. But this was supposed to be a de-escalation zone, agreed by Russia, the United States and Jordan. Well, that agreement's clearly now null and void, much to the consternation of neighbouring countries. The US has reportedly told the Syrian rebels not to expect military support in southern Syria. So why is DERAA so sensitive? Apart from its symbolic significance as the birthplace of the revolution, the province is considered strategically important. It's on the border with Jordan, and it stretches all the way to the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. And as we've mentioned, the US, Russia and Jordan agreed last year to include DERAA as part of 4 so-called de-escalation zones designed to reduce the fighting in Syria. Well, Syria's government has urged rebels to give up their weapons, but so far they're refusing to recognise President Bashar al-Assad.
We don't recognise Assad's authority. He has destroyed our cities and killed our people. He destroyed Syria to stay in power. We will never recognize him, and we reject the presence of Iranian and Afghan militias. It's only Syrians who should decide the future of the country.
All right, let's introduce our guests now. From Beirut, we have Sami Nada, who's director of the Levant Institute for Strategic Affairs. From London, we have MAMOUN Abu Nawar, retired Jordanian Air Force General. And from Arezzo in Italy, via Skype, Joshua Landis, Director of the Centre for Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us. Can I start with you, MAMOUN, in London? Because the words there we've just heard of that FSA commander suggest that any kind of political deal is not at all acceptable. They're not prepared to accept the authority of the government, of President Assad, so a battle is inevitable. My question, therefore, is what sort of support do the rebels have, and are they likely to be completely wiped out from this?
I think they lost the whole support from the region and from the American and their friends. As the Americans suggested that they should put any assumption that the American will interfere on that region or southern part of Jordan, southern part of Syria. So I think they are in deep trouble. If I were them, I'll stay on my land, keep the current map as is, and I will ask for reconciliation. That will be another route, and a lot of people will be killed if the battle stayed or remain on. And we see the also with the Russian air power, which is dominant force, and I think they should proceed on that direction because they will lose it at the end of it. It's a matter of time.
What sort of weaponry, what sort of resources do they have at their disposal?
They have light machinery, and they don't have like heavy tanks or air defense system, shoulder missile, or even they're short of these things. And I don't think the American or the bordering country will support them. They should read that very carefully, and they should read the battle very carefully also, and took a decision on that. And by doing that, they would not give the regime a justification to keep on attacking them and killing these people. I think he's the biggest dictator in our part of the world, and I don't think the Syrian people got this revolution to make a political reform or whatever.
Okay.
They want a regime change, and what the interviewer suggested that.
All right. Joshua, is this battle, the battle for DERAA, is this a definitive moment in Syria's war?
It is. The war has largely come to an end. There are three major pockets that remain. The southern one that we're talking about now, Idlib, which Turkey may try to hold on to, and of course the large Kurdish region in the north, and Kurdish and Arab region above the Euphrates, that the United States presently holds with its Kurdish and Arab allies up there. So those are the three areas that Assad has promised to take back. It's beginning with this one because it seems to be the most least well defended and the most vulnerable, because Jordan ultimately wants to open the roads with Damascus, wants to get back on a regular footing with Damascus. It wants to send refugees home. The United States is not going to defend this region. There are dozens of militias there, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda. What would America's long-term plan be if they intervened to save these militias? Would they help them establish a state? Would they protect them forever? It's unclear. And America has made it very, I think, very clear that it's not going to do that.
Right.
This deconflict arrangement was negotiated a year ago, 2 years ago, when the United States wanted to fight ISIS. Today, ISIS is destroyed. So the object, which was to get Syria, Russia, the United States, and everybody focused on fighting ISIS, is now no longer there. And so that's why the Syrian regime has turned its attention to taking it back.
Right, OK. Sami, coming to you, we heard in the little clip from the FSA commander that there are Afghan militias involved in the fight, as well as the well-known Iranian militias taking part on the side of the government. But this has been described as a potential powder keg for a wider regional fight, a battle which is alarming many, including the UN Secretary-General. Why is DERAA so sensitive an area in terms of the overall region?
Because DERAA is in the south, and the south of Syria is the scene of confrontation between two major players, Israel and Iran. Let's not forget that the south of Syria was subject to a de-escalation deal between Jordan, Russia, and America that was decided on in September of last year. It was confirmed during the summit between Putin and Trump last November, and now this is a serious breach of this deal. And at the core of this deal was the Iranian presence in southern Syria. Israel's demand was that Iran has to be 40 to 50 kilometers far from this border. This is the core of the deal. And today, this battle will decide the Iranian presence and its capability to engage with Israel. Since day one, Iran was trying to change the rule of engagement with Israel. So now Russia testing the ability of America to defend this deal? Is it trying to test the readiness of the FSA, or there is a deal that has been already decided on, and Russia, according to which Iran will withdraw from the Israeli border, and in exchange of that, Russia is claiming that this area will be under his strict control.
Joshua, what do you think of that? Sami seems to suggest that perhaps there is a deal that can pull all of the parties to the conflict back from the brink? Or do you think that they are basically just ignoring the warnings that have been given by the United States, that it's prepared to take firm and appropriate measures if the regime continues to create violence in what is supposed to be this de-escalation zone? What do you think?
Well, I don't think that they really have come to a deal. I think they have talked around the parameters, as your guest just explained. But Iran has said we're staying. Israel has demanded that they leave altogether. There doesn't seem to be any final agreement. On the other hand, it seems quite clear that Israel is capable of drawing red lines in Syria. It has attacked the Iranians in the north, up near Buk Kamal, in the south. It has been very successful in destroying all of the potential Iranian bases, missile implants, and so forth. The United States, I think, is not stepping in and has made it clear it will not step in because it believes that Israel is perfectly capable of defending itself in this region, that its air force and its technology is far superior to the Iranians. Now, that doesn't mean that the Iranians are going to sit back. They may continue to probe. We just saw, in the last 24 hours that a drone was sent towards the Golan. Israel sent up rockets against it. It turned around. There is going to be this kind of jousting, I believe, and Iran is repositioning itself. But Israel is quite capable and certainly very able to attack Syria at will. And I don't think that anybody's really worried that Israel is going to be pushed into the sea anytime soon.
All right, MAMOUN, Joshua has described what could happen to be a series of joustings, if you like. But at the end of the day, it is small, fragile Jordan that is going to bear the brunt of any escalation of the conflict in this particular region. How fragile is Jordan at this moment?
Very fragile. And with all respect, I disagree fully with your previous speaker about the assessment in Syria. The escalation zone never meant that it's a safe haven or demilitarized zone. And what it meant really is Assad stay in power and regain the territory for him, help the Iranian expansion in our part of the world. Israeli get limited capability to stop the Iranian maneuverability in the area, or politically and militarily. So the de-escalation zone has no meaning now after the regime got DERAA back. For Jordan, yes, it's a matter of time and they will regain the Nasib crossing area to Jordan. That's a very important crossing point. And the main concern of Jordan is the chaos and the refugees, with our internal problem now concerning economy and some instability, I could say, in Jordan now, regarding changing prime minister, etc. With all this influx of refugees, that will be a big trouble, affect our demography and our way of life and our economy also.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all seen those. Yeah, we've all seen those demonstrations.
What's Jordan plan? May I carry on about 10 or 5 seconds only? War never been based on promises and guarantee as the American way of doing things, promising the rebels initially, and all of a sudden they cut them back, and this is the way they do it. Also for Jordan, they should not base their strategy on promises and guarantee from the American, and they should have a plan B to stop or force a safe haven for these refugees, because Jordan cannot take it anymore, and it's a very difficult situation now we are in.
Absolutely. And Sami, because of course we shouldn't lose sight, should we, of the fact that there are civilians who are pretty much pinned in. They've got a closed border with Jordan, and they've got an encroaching military attack coming their way. What do they do? What do these hundreds of thousands of civilians do?
Yeah, exactly. In DERAA, you have more than 800,000 civilians living there. And if these military developments will lead to a new flood of refugees to Jordan, it's like Lebanon in a very fragile situation, not only politically like in Lebanon, but economically. I mean, we're talking about an economic collapse of two regions or two countries that are bordering Syria. And if this is to happen, it will have really very damaging consequences on all the region. We have seen that about 2 million refugees threaten the whole Europe of, I would not say collapse, but put Europe in big trouble. In Jordan and Lebanon, we are talking about like 4 million Syrian refugees for a total population of 6 to 8 million. So this is to put things in perspective. I think the Secretary of the United Nations has had like wise word in saying that this has to stop, at least to contain or to stop a possible new flood of refugees that will have very damaging consequences on all the region.
Absolutely. So, Joshua, how can this be averted? I'm particularly taken by a report by the International Crisis Group, which suggests that given that the rebels cannot mount any kind of credible military defence, they need to be party to some sort of agreement, some sort of deal, whereby the state of President Assad retakes control of the area and they agree on how to be governed.
Yes, the International Crisis Group put out a very good report. It foresaw the realities that you are drawn out in this program, which is that there could be a big flood of refugees into Jordan, which could destabilize the region. And it hoped that America would put pressure on the refugees to withdraw from the region and not to put up a fight so that it would not turn into the Ghouta. The problem with this, however, is that the rebels are determined to stay in place. At least that's what they've said. And I think that they're trying to use the anxiety and the leverage of a potential flood of refugees into Jordan in order to get the United States and local powers to step in to put pressure on Assad and to try to use that as leverage. And so this is a game of chicken that we're seeing right now. Everybody agrees that the rebels do not have the balance of power in their favor, that they can't survive. But they want better terms. They want somebody to come in and provide them with guarantees, which will be negotiable. And how we get there, it's unclear. What the Americans can guarantee them, whether it's money, whether it's a safe haven someplace, I don't know.
And Mahmoud, it seems very much as though time is certainly not on their side. Barrel bombs are already being dropped, and we understand that Russian warplanes have taken to the skies as well. So this war for DERAA is actually underway, isn't it? So how long do you think it will take before the region is devastated and we see this humanitarian crisis that Sami has already outlined?
It's very difficult to predict when the war in southern DERAA or DERAA will be over. But I think the Russian engineered sort of understanding with the Israeli that allow the Syrian army to come to buffer zone 1974 nearby the GOLAN in Jordan, which is the most critical thing. If I'm a planner there, I would not rely on American guarantee and promises regarding that. I should have plan B by asking the whole international community to go for safe haven for these refugees nearby the Jordanian border. I think this is the least Jordan can do, and they should clearly tell the world that we can't take any more Syrian into our part of the world, though they are our brethren, but that would be
absolutely. We understand the pressure, and Sami, obviously the same for your country, isn't it? For Lebanon, the pressure of this flood of desperate people is almost too much to bear. What alternatives do you see? What sort of pressure can be brought to bear, do you think, that could avert this military conflagration that we seem to be witnessing already?
I think that the only solution, the one and only solution for this refugee crisis is to ensure safe zones in Syria and to ensure, a safe return for those refugees.
But the fighting has to stop, doesn't it, Sami? The fighting has to stop.
The fighting has to stop. This is true, but in some region of Syria, the fighting has been stopped. In practically all of North Syria, there is no fighting anymore, and serious effort can be done to ensure at least the return of some of those refugees, perhaps not all of them, but some of them, and the same could be said for the region of Homs and of Damascus. But the question is, given that this re-engineering of Syria, the demographic re-engineering of Syria, is this question of the return of the refugees is really on the table, or there is a poker game here that we're hearing some diplomatic words, but on the ground we are witnessing a different reality, a partition of Syria or a re-engineering of Syria based on new demographic and ethnic rules.
Absolutely. Joshua, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because the shifting of demographies has been one of the characteristics of this war. And many people, of course, are loath to give up the region in which they live and be forcibly moved to another part of the country completely, which has happened in Ghouta and other places as well. And they're all being fenced in almost in Idlib province in the northwest of the country. This is one of the great fears, isn't it, of civilians?
Absolutely. And everybody knows that when the regime returns, one has to give up their political rights, and they will no longer have freedom of expression, and they'll be frightened that those who have joined the revolution, who have supported it openly, will possibly be jailed and discriminated against. This is, of course, the terrible fear. And we see it, you know, the big question is, will refugees return to Syria if there's not regime change? And many analysts are very divided on this question. We've seen many reports by the Carnegie Foundation and others saying that refugees will not return so long as Assad stays in power. I've heard many others say they're skeptical of this. If the economy stability were to return to some sort of stability and normalcy, that people might go back because conditions are not good in Lebanon. Many people don't want to live in Turkey. The Turks are trying to push them out. The Jordanians are trying to push them out. So it's unclear what the international community, what stand it should take, because the United States and many others have said they're not going to help rebuild. They don't want to help the economy. This will only consolidate Assad's power, re-legitimize him, and not lead to regime change. The United States is still, at least orally, says that it wants ultimately Assad to leave through elections, and it's going to put pressure on, economic pressure. So this bigger question and is still up in the air, and it's the civilians down below who are being caught in this clash between rebel and regime, and between the West and the East, Iran and Saudi Arabia. So the people of Syria are still not out of the woods.
A cold, hard fact on which to end this conversation. Gentlemen, thank you all very much indeed.